Hey, my name is Oliver, and today we're going to be focusing on Abraham Maslow's life with an analysis of his timeline, along with some evolution theories and influences, and reflection of the theories. First off, Maslow was an American psychologist who was considered one of the founding fathers of the humanistic movement, making major contributions with concepts applying to the humanistic approach. He was basically known for his theory of self actualization and the hierarchy of needs, digging deep into motivation and personal growth. Moving on to his major life milestones, Abraham Maslow was born in 1908, and his parents were from Kiev, which was Russia, which is now Ukraine. In 1925, he enrolled at the City College of New York and the Brooklyn Law School. And in 1926, Maslow transferred to Cornell University, and that same year he transferred to the University of Wisconsin, where he got married with Bertha Goodman, which was also enrolled at the University of Wisconsin. So this is where he actually got his three main degrees from. So he got his Bachelor's of Arts in 1930, his Master of Arts in 1931, and his PhD in 1934, and all in the field of psychology. After he got three of his degrees, he wasted no time and went right into teaching. In 1935, he moved to Columbia University. 2 years after that, he moved to Brooklyn College. Within those 2 years, he was working as a psychology professor at the schools. 10 years after this, he sadly suffered from a heart attack, and the good news was that he was able to bounce back from the heart attack. And in 1951, he moved to Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, to serve as the chairman for the psych department. And 3 years after this, in 1954 to 1966, Maslow would publish around 6 books after Motivation and Personality. 1 year after this, he would get the American Humanist Association Humanist of the Year. In 1968, he was offered a fellowship by the Saga Administration Corporation. And 2 years after this, in 1970, he died of a heart attack at the age of 62. Okay, next we have the major world events that occurred within his timeline. Alright, just to give a little quick rundown, we're starting with World War I, which lasted from 1914 to 1918, which was a war where millions of people died, and it was a global conflict between the Allies and the Central Powers. And as you can see the little picture displayed on the right, you can see the soldiers in the trenches at warfare. Alright, up next we have the Great Depression, which lasted around 10 years from 1929 to 1939, which was a severe economic downturn that caused unemployment, bank failures, and poverty all across the world. As you can see to the picture to the right, we have two gentlemen wanting a job and wanting to get hired so they could get food for their families. Up next, we have World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, which was a global war involving the Axis and the Allied powers, leading to mass destruction, eventually the Holocaust, and reshaping world order. As stated, we have the Holocaust lasting from 1941 to 1945. This was Nazi Germany's systematic genocide of 6 million Jews along with other targeted groups, again during World War II, led by Hitler. So we have the Cold War from 1947 to 1991, which was an era marked by proxy wars, like little wars like the Vietnam War. So there was an actual no battle going on between the two groups. It was just proxy wars. We have nuclear arm races, propaganda, and ideological conflict between the US and the Soviet. After this, we have the civil rights movement from 1950 to 1960s, which was around 10 years. Essentially, a struggle for racial inequality within the US, which was aimed at ending segregation and securing voting rights for the African Americans. Alright, next we move to the major theoretical contributions of Maslow. Starting with the hierarchy of needs, this was his theory on humanism and existentialism that stated that the individual's personal experience is the most important factor when studying direct human behavior. Then Maslow developed this theory of motivation, or this pyramid that explains the different types of human needs, organizing them by priority, from the most basic needs from the bottom to the most complex being the top. Alright, next we have self-actualization, which is the highest need in the Maslow's hierarchy, which involves the maximum realization and fulfillment of our own potentials, talents, and abilities. It's possible to satisfy all the other needs in the hierarchy, but if we are not self-actualizing, we'll be restless, frustrated, and discontent. A good note is that it could take many forms, and we're all capable of maximizing our own abilities. Thirdly, we have meta-motivation. According to Maslow's theory, the self-actualizers would have a different motivation than most, which he refers to as meta-motivation. This meant that they look to maximize their own personal potential rather than seeing or achieving a certain goal. Fourthly, we have self-determination. Maslow's theory, outgrowing from the self-actualization theory, addresses that people have a natural tendency to express their interests, to exercise and develop their potentials, and to overcome challenges. This, he explains, is driven by intrinsic motivation, meaning that you engage in an activity strictly because of interest or challenge presented. Lastly, we have peak experience. Based on Maslow's theory of self actualization, he noted that self actualizers have moments of extreme happiness, pleasures, or fulfillment, during which their self is transcended and they feel very powerful, confident, and decisive while being connected to the world. Alright, next we actually move on to the influence and the reflection of the theories, being the actual analysis. So, in World War I, although Maslow was a child, it's possible that the war shaped his political view and structure, especially in Europe, where most of it was taking place. Due to the mass destruction and widespread suffering, this could have sparked the thought to develop rather a positive approach to humanistic psychology and lean towards the goodness rather than the dark views of the war. Alright, so next we have the Great Depression. Maslow actually began his academic career during this time of economic hardship affecting his college affordability. This could have influenced his hierarchy of needs, really influenced him to create a base of safety needs. During this time, millions of people were unable to meet the bare minimum survival/psychological needs such as food, water, etc., because they couldn't get no jobs. Thus, this possibly gave them the thought of needing to meet the basics before people could actually reach the higher needs. Alright, so in talk of World War II, Maslow developed and inspired a sense of humanistic psychology, specifically the studies of self actualizing, as we saw before. Maslow could have been inspired by people who risked their own lives to protect others or help others. This would really show that beyond the basic survival level or need, the soldiers fighting were motivated by a desire to fulfill their highest potential and make a positive impact for others. They would not only fight back for their survival, but rather for the meaningful thought of saving others. Next, we have the Holocaust, and Maslow, from being from Jewish descent, millions of Jews were murdered by the Nazi regime, actually putting him in danger. It's likely that this concept of peak experiences was inspired by it. Despite the atrocity, there were actually stories of kindness and heart within it. For example, there were actually people within the concentration camps that would help others survive, providing comfort in horrible conditions, such as Nicholas Winton, which is the individual shown to the right. They would really show a sense of goodness, a moment of deep connection for sacrificing for others, and a purpose, finding happiness within your goodness. So this individual would actually help children escape these concentration camps. So next we have the Cold War, lasting from 1947 to 1989, and Maslow actually lived through the early stages of the rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union. So it's possible that this could have influenced a portion of his theory of hierarchy, as his book Motivation and Personality was published within this era. Really specifically, I believe his safety stage in the pyramid was influenced as the threat of nuclear war created fear amongst everyone. He could have took notice that when people are under these major threats, the motivation would be ensuring this actual stage. This just puts an emphasis on needing a stable environment in order to reach your full potential. So actually moving on to the next stage. Finally, moving on to the civil rights, the fight for civil rights, especially for African Americans, was ongoing during Maslow's later years, but the movement still played an influence within his theory of self determination and the concept of esteemed needs. Within the movement, many advocated for change, showing their true tendency to overcome huge challenges for equality. And despite the brutality that they faced and the harmful treatments and threats, they still decided to continue to fight for their rights, showing their true motivation. And aside from this idea, it makes sense that Maslow could have gained some knowledge for his esteemed needs concept because it was a time where discrimination and lack of quality was shown for African Americans, having no respect which was needed for them to gain success and gain support at the same time. Therefore, the safety needs would have to be met for everyone, which is why many work together to create these supportive movements, advocating for change and simply growing together. Eventually, this would give them the respect and recognition to many who played a part, allowing all these people to reach self actualization. And this individual to the right is a prime example, Martin Luther King, of reaching this top tier. And here we have all the sources that we use for this presentation, and we're ending off with a quote. This quote states that one could choose to go toward safety or forward toward growth. Growth must be chosen again and again. Fear must be overcome again and again. Thank you.